Mommy, why don't you like shopping with Daddy?
Oh, baby. When you grow up, you will understand.
I never thought a regular Saturday afternoon at Meridian Mall would be the day my daughter watched me get dragged by my braids, in front of 100 strangers who did nothing but record it. Zoe had been asking me all week. Her sneakers had completely given out, the sole on the left one was flapping loose, and every single morning before school, I'd been safety pinning it shut so none of the other kids would notice. I'd finally saved enough from my double shifts at the hospital laundry. It wasn't a lot. But it was enough for one good pair of shoes, and maybe those bakery cookies she kept asking about. She was practically floating beside me. Her little hand wrapped around 3 of my fingers, not my whole hand, just those 3 fingers, like she decided that was her spot, and nobody else could have it. She was chattering about the cookies, about school, about a butterfly she'd seen on the walk to the bus stop that morning. She talked the whole ride over. I let her. There is nothing in this world I love more than the sound of my daughter being happy. We were in the grocery section, picking up a few things first. That's the kind of Saturday it was supposed to be: shoes, cookies, maybe a movie at home. Simple. Safe. I was reaching for a bottle on the top shelf, when my scalp caught fire. Not slowly. Not like a warning. Instant. Violent. My braids snapped tight and my whole body jerked backward before my mind even processed what was happening. My hand hit the shelf. 3 bottles crashed to the floor. I couldn't get my footing. The pain was coming from everywhere at once. Then I heard Zoe scream. And underneath her scream, I heard his voice. "You really thought you could just disappear on me?" I knew that voice the way you know a scar. Not because it was loud. Marcus never raised his voice in public. That was the thing. He was always so controlled in front of people. So reasonable. So calm. And that calmness. That was the most terrifying thing about him. Because I knew what lived underneath it. The restraining order said 500 feet. It said supervised contact only, scheduled through the courts. It said he could not come within 500 feet of me or Zoe. He was close enough that I could smell the liquor underneath his cologne. "You belong to me," he said, quieter now, right against my ear. "That doesn't change because some judge signed a piece of paper." Zoe wrapped both arms around my waist. Her whole body was shaking. "Daddy, stop," she cried. "Daddy, please stop." Her voice broke on the last word, and I felt something inside me break with it. People were watching. The whole aisle had frozen. I could see phones going up, screens lighting, people adjusting angles to get a better shot. Someone near the end of the aisle said, "Somebody call security," but didn't move. Nobody moved. They never do. It's easier to record. Marcus yanked my braids again, harder this time, pulling my chin up so I had no choice but to look at him. And I saw it in his face. The thing I remembered from every bad night in that house. It wasn't just anger. Anger would have been easier. It was enjoyment. He was enjoying this. The audience. The power. Zoe begging. All of it. "You're nothing without me," he said. "You hear me? Nothing." I couldn't breathe. Not from fear, from the angle he was holding me. My vision was starting to blur at the edges. Zoe dropped to her knees. She pressed her little hands together, like she was praying, right there on the mall floor. Her knees on the cold tile. Tears running down her face. "Please," she whispered. "Please, Daddy, please don't hurt her. Please." He didn't even look at her. That's when I saw him. He was standing at the far end of the aisle, maybe 20 feet back, completely still in the middle of all that chaos. Tall. Built like someone who had never needed to prove it. He was wearing a perfectly fitted black suit, the collar open at the throat, no tie. The kind of suit that doesn't come off a rack, you could tell by the way it sat across his shoulders. And there, just above the collar on the right side of his neck, was a tattoo. Dark ink. Precise characters. Something I couldn't read from that distance. His face was unreadable. Not frozen, the way everyone else was frozen. Still. Like whatever was happening in that aisle was information he was calmly processing. His eyes were dark, level, calculating, moving between me, Marcus, and Zoe in a way that felt less like watching, and more like assessing. He wasn't recording. He wasn't whispering to anyone. He was just looking at my daughter on her knees on the floor. Something shifted in his expression. Something small. Something that, if you blinked, you'd miss entirely. Then he looked down at his wrist. Slowly. Deliberately. He reached with his left hand and unclasped his watch, silver, heavy, the kind of piece that costs more than 3 months of my rent, and without looking away from Marcus, he held it out to the side. The man standing just behind his right shoulder stepped forward and took it without a word. No instruction needed. Like this had a protocol. The man in the black suit rolled up his sleeve. Once. Then once more. And he walked forward. Not fast. Not the way someone runs toward a crisis. The way someone walks, when the outcome is already decided, and the only remaining question is how long it takes the other person to realize it. If you're watching this right now, wherever you are in the world, go ahead and hit that like button, and drop your location and the time in the comments. Because what happened in the next 30 seconds changed everything. And I need you to see exactly how fast the air in a room can change. When the right person decides he's seen enough. He reached Marcus without a single word. His hand closed around Marcus's wrist, the one still knotted in my braids, and I felt the grip release so suddenly that I stumbled forward. Not because Marcus chose to let go. Because the way the man applied pressure left him no option. I heard Marcus hiss through his teeth. Let her go. His voice was quiet. Quieter than Marcus's had been. But the weight behind it was something different entirely. The kind of voice that doesn't need volume, because it has never needed it. Marcus spun and swung. He didn't get the second one. The man stepped in, not rushed, not angry, nothing wasted, and delivered one clean, precise punch. The sound of it carried through the entire section of the mall. Marcus went down like every bone in his legs had simply stopped working. He didn't stumble. He dropped. Silence. The whole aisle went completely silent. The man stood over Marcus for a moment. Then he reached down, adjusted his cuff, and straightened his sleeve, as if nothing of particular interest had just occurred. From somewhere in the frozen crowd, another figure materialized and moved to his side. Broad, quiet, dressed in the same black. Flanking him without being asked. The entire energy of that aisle changed. I felt it. Everyone felt it. The space went from a place where something bad was happening, to a place where something powerful was standing. His guard looked down at Marcus, then back up. Should we handle this, Mr. Min? The man glanced at Marcus on the floor. The same way you'd look at a spill you'd stepped around. Call the police. Make sure they're informed about the restraining order. Then he turned to me. His expression didn't soften exactly. But something in it shifted, the calculation stepping back just enough to let something more careful through. Are you all right? I couldn't speak. I just held Zoe. She had come off her knees the moment Marcus dropped, and buried her face in my side. I could feel her whole body shaking against mine, her fingers locked into the back of my jacket. Mommy's okay, baby, I managed. Mommy's okay. He crouched down. All the way down to Zoe's level, right there on the mall floor in that expensive suit. And he waited, until she slowly looked up at him. You were very brave, he said gently. What you did took real courage. Zoe studied him for a long moment with those big, wet eyes. Then she nodded, just once, and pressed her face back into my side. Security arrived. Police followed minutes later. Marcus was arrested on the floor of the grocery aisle, still dazed, the restraining order violation documented on camera from 17 different angles. The man in the black suit, I would learn his name was Min Jae-won, gave his statement the way someone gives directions. Clear, organized, unbothered. I gave mine while shaking so hard the officer had to ask me to slow down twice. Afterward, he walked us to my car. His guard stayed several steps behind, scanning the parking structure the whole way, with the quiet efficiency of someone paid to anticipate problems. "Thank you," I said, when we reached my car. My voice didn't sound like mine yet. "I don't know what would have happened if." "You don't need to thank me." He said it without sharpness, but with finality. "But I need you to understand something. Men who do what he just did, don't stop because they get arrested." "I have a restraining order," I said. He looked at me steadily. "A piece of paper tells you what should happen. It doesn't control what does." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and produced a card. Simple. Cream-colored. Heavy stock. Just a name and a single phone number. "If he comes near you again," he said, "call that number. Not the police first. That number first." I took it. I didn't know what else to do. Zoe and I sat in that car for a long time before I could make myself start the engine. She climbed into my lap, something she hadn't done since she was 4, and we just stayed there. Her breathing eventually slowed. Mine took longer. "Mommy," she said finally, very quietly. "Is Daddy going to come back?" I held her tighter. "No, baby. Not anymore." I didn't know if that was true. But I needed it to be. When we got home, my older sister Tanya was already there. My mother must have called her. She took one look at me, at both of us, and pulled us into her arms without saying a word. Then she held me at arm's length and studied my face. "Someone helped you," she said. Not a question. She could always read me. "Yes." I showed her the card. Her eyes went still in that way they do, right before she's about to say something she knows I'm not going to like. "Cindy. Do you know who this is?" "No." "Should I?" She pulled out her phone. The search took less than 10 seconds. Min Jae-won. Real estate developer. Hospitality. Import and export. Holdings across 3 states. Profile photos at charity galas, standing beside politicians and executives whose names I recognized from the news. And then, further down, smaller headlines, older. Alleged ties to organized networks. Associates questioned. Never charged. "He's connected," Tanya said carefully. "Seriously connected, Cindy. People in this city don't cross him. He saved our lives." "I know." She took my hand. "I'm just telling you to be careful." But the strange thing, the thing I couldn't explain to her, was that standing next to Min Jae-won in that mall aisle was the first time in 4 years that I hadn't been afraid. Not of the situation. Not of what came next. For the first time in 4 years, I felt like something was standing between me and the danger, instead of me standing there alone. I didn't know yet what that would cost. I didn't know yet what kind of world I just stepped toward. But I kept that card. And 3 days later, when the unknown number called, I answered. Before we go any further, go ahead and hit that like button and drop your location in the comments. Tell me what city you're watching from and what time it is where you are. It truly means a lot to me seeing this community grow all around the world. Every single comment and share helps us bring more stories like Cindy's to the people who need to hear them, together. 3 days later, a number I didn't recognize called me. I almost didn't answer. "Ms. Cindy." A woman's voice. Professional, unhurried. "Mr. Min asked me to check in and confirm that you and your daughter are safe." My chest did something strange. "We're fine," I said. "Please tell him thank you." "Of course." "He also wanted you to know that your ex-husband has been denied bail. The charges have been escalated based on witness statements and video evidence." Mr. Min made sure the mall security footage was submitted directly to the district attorney's office. I stood in my kitchen for a long moment after she hung up, holding the phone against my chest. He was still protecting us. From a distance. Without being asked. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. I went back to work. Zoe went back to school. We moved through our days carefully, the way you move through a space where you're not sure yet if the floor will hold. I was in the park with Zoe on a Tuesday afternoon when a black car pulled up along the curb. My whole body tensed before I could stop it. Then Min Jae-won stepped out. He was dressed differently than I'd seen him, still expensive, unmistakably, but without the full formality of the suit. Dark slacks, a simple charcoal shirt, sleeves pushed up. He walked over with his hands in his pockets, unhurried, the same way he'd walked toward Marcus in that aisle. Like he'd already decided how this would go, and was simply following through. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said. "No. It's okay." Zoe looked up from the swings, recognized him, and gave a small, shy wave. He waved back. "I wanted to make sure you were both all right," he said. "And to let you know, Marcus won't be a problem anymore." "What does that mean?" His attorney advised him to accept a plea agreement. "He'll be in prison for a significant period of time." The relief hit me so hard my knees actually buckled. He reached out and steadied me, one hand on my arm, firm and immediate, and I let him, because I had no choice. "Thank you," I said. "I don't know how I'll ever." "Have dinner with us," he said. I blinked. "What?" "You and Zoe. Somewhere she would enjoy. Let me do that much." It wasn't a demand. I had spent 4 years learning the difference between requests and demands, and this was something else entirely, an offer. Genuine. Unhurried. With no pressure behind it. I looked at Zoe on the swings, watching us with her head tilted. "Okay," I said. "Okay." He smiled. A real one. And something in it made me understand that it wasn't an expression he used often. Before he left, he crouched down in front of Zoe. She stopped swinging and came over, cautious, but curious. "Your mother tells me you love to draw," he said. Zoe nodded. "Then I know exactly where we should go. There's a restaurant with paper and colored pencils on every table." Her eyes went wide. "The whole table?" "The whole table." She looked at me with an expression that said the decision had already been made, and my input was largely ceremonial at this point. I found myself smiling on the walk back to the car. For the first time in longer than I could track, I felt something other than exhausted vigilance. I felt, just for a moment, like something might actually be okay. He took us to a Korean barbecue restaurant where the host greeted him by name and the staff treated us like we'd made a reservation months in advance. Zoe's eyes went straight to the tabletop grill. "We cook our own food?" she asked, amazed. "We do," Min Jae-won said. "Want to help?" For the next hour, I watched him explain each dish to her in simple terms, letting her hold the tongs, praising her when the timing was right, steering her gently when it wasn't. He was patient in a way that didn't look performed. Natural. Like this was something he understood how to do, even though something in his eyes, every now and then, suggested it also cost him something I didn't yet understand. "You're really good with her," I said quietly, during a moment when Zoe was deeply focused on flipping a piece of meat. He glanced at me. Something shifted briefly in his expression before he controlled it. "She makes it easy," he said. When Zoe excused herself to wash her hands, his tone changed, not colder, but more direct. "How are you actually doing?" "I'm managing." "That's not what I asked." I looked down at my plate. "I'm terrified. Every time my phone buzzes with an unknown number. Every time someone walks up behind me at the laundromat. I know he's in prison, but I keep waiting for the next thing." "There won't be a next thing," he said. "You can't promise that." "Yes," he said, and his eyes held mine in a way that was completely steady. "I can." The way he said it, not loud, not dramatic, just absolute, made something locked inside my chest shift slightly. When we left, he walked us to the car and crouched down to hand Zoe a small paper bag. Inside was a set of professional drawing pencils in a tin case, and a sketchbook with a dark blue cover. She looked up at him like he had handed her something sacred. "Thank you, Mr. Min," she said softly. "You're welcome." Before I could add my own thanks, he leaned slightly toward me and said, quietly enough that only I could hear, "If you ever need me, don't call the office number. Call me directly." The message came on a Thursday morning. I didn't recognize the number. I almost didn't open it. But something made me tap the screen, and the image loaded slowly, and my whole body went cold before my mind finished processing what I was seeing. It was Zoe. Walking out of her school. Backpack on, holding her teacher's hand, squinting into the afternoon sun. I recognized what she was wearing. I had put her in that outfit that very morning. Beneath the photo, 4 words. You think he's enough? My hand started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I called Min Jae-won. He answered on the first ring. Someone sent me a photo of Zoe, I said, and my voice cracked on her name. Outside her school. Today. They were watching her. A pause. 1 second. Maybe 2. Forward it to me right now. I did, fingers fumbling. Stay where you are, he said. His voice had changed. Still controlled, but the gentleness was gone, replaced by something with edges. I'm sending someone to your location. Don't leave until they arrive. Don't go anywhere alone. Zoe is still at school. She won't be alone for 1 minute. I promise you. He hung up. 18 minutes later, a man in a dark suit appeared in the doorway of the laundromat. He didn't speak. He simply waited while I grabbed my things, walked me to my car, and followed me the entire drive to Zoe's school. When I pulled up, 2 more of Min Jae-won's people were already positioned outside, one near the main entrance, one at the edge of the playground, in that particular, practiced stillness of people who are paid to watch everything. I ran inside. Zoe was at her desk, coloring a picture of what appeared to be a purple horse. She looked up when I came through the door. Mommy? She climbed out of her chair. Why are you here early? I crossed the room and pulled her into me. I just wanted to see you, baby, I said into the top of her head. I just needed to see you. That evening, Min Jae-won came to my apartment. He sat across from me at my small kitchen table, one of his men stationed outside my front door, and he told me, calmly and plainly, that Marcus had been making calls from prison. That people on the outside had been contacted. That the photograph was meant to tell me that the restraining order, the arrest, the plea deal, none of it had made me safe. The police can investigate, I said. Investigations take time. And you? He looked at me across the table. I don't take time. I knew what that meant. I didn't ask him to explain it. I didn't know yet whether that should frighten me or steady me. And sitting there in my small kitchen, with my daughter asleep down the hall and his man standing outside my door, I realized I didn't have the luxury of figuring that out slowly. He stood to leave. He stopped near the door. No one is going to hurt you again, he said. I need you to understand, that isn't something I'm saying to make you feel better. It's something I'm telling you because it's what will happen. He left. I locked the door. I stood in my kitchen for a long time, one hand pressed flat against the door, trying to understand what it meant that the most frightened and the most reassured I had felt in 4 years were both happening inside me at the exact same time. He went quiet for 3 days after that night. No calls. No texts. No black cars appearing at the curb. I told myself he was busy. That a man with his kind of reach had 100 things demanding his attention, and I was one small situation in a much larger world. I told myself that on day 1. By day 2, I had stopped believing it. By day 3, I was checking my phone every time I set it down, which was humiliating in a way I didn't want to examine too closely. On the 3rd night, just after 9, my phone finally rang. Can I come over? His voice sounded different. Not cold, not distant, tired. The kind of tired that lives underneath everything and only surfaces when someone has stopped performing for the night. Of course, I said. Is everything okay? I'll be there in 10 minutes. When he arrived, he still looked like himself, put together, controlled, the kind of presence that fills a doorway without trying. But something around his eyes was heavier than usual. I noticed his right hand when he came inside. His knuckles were bruised. One of them split. I didn't ask what had happened. I led him to the kitchen without saying anything, got ice from the freezer, and wrapped it in a dish towel, the way my mother always did. He watched me do it. When I pressed the cloth gently against his knuckles, he looked at me with an expression I couldn't immediately name. You don't have to. You've been taking care of us for weeks, I said. It's my turn. He didn't argue. He sat at my kitchen table and let me hold the ice against his hand, and neither of us spoke for a while. The apartment was quiet. Zoe was asleep. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, somewhere on the street, a car passed and faded. I'm not used to this, he said finally. Used to what? Someone caring whether I'm hurt. I kept my eyes on his hand. Well, get used to it. I made tea. He stayed. And in the quiet of my small kitchen, piece by piece, he told me things. Not the parts that made the news articles. Not the business, or the holdings, or the network of people who answered when he called. He told me the other parts. The apartment he'd grown up in. The way his father worked. The years of building something from nothing, accumulating power the way some people accumulate debt. Gradually, then all at once, until the weight of it becomes the only thing holding the structure up. He told me about his wife. Her name was Soo-Yun. He said it carefully. The way you handle something that has been broken and mended and broken again. They had married young. She had been patient with him in the years when patience was the only thing that worked. He told me about his daughter. Han Baiyal. 6 years old. She had loved drawing, and she had a specific way of laughing that started silent before the sound caught up. Car accident, he said. 8 years ago. A driver ran a light. I was at a meeting across the city. He paused. I got the call 2 hours later. I reached across the table and put my hand over his, the unbandaged one. He looked down at our hands. Then up at me. I've spent 8 years, he said, building more power than I could ever use, with no one left to use it for. And then you saw us, I said. I saw Zoe on her knees on that floor. Begging. His jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. And I thought, not again. Not if I can stop it. We sat together on the couch after that, the ice long since melted. He leaned his head back and closed his eyes. He didn't look powerful in that moment. He looked like a person who had been carrying something alone, for a very long time. Stay, I said. Just for a little while. He stayed. And for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe all the way down. 2 days later, he called. His voice had returned to what it usually was, measured, even, giving nothing away. The people who sent you that photograph, he said. They've been handled. What does that mean? It means they won't contact you again. They won't contact anyone on Marcus's behalf again. Min. You won't hear from them. Zoe won't be followed. It's done. I sat with that for a moment. What did you do? What I had to. I knew better than to push past that. And the thing I had to sit with, the thing that kept me awake for part of that night, was that I wasn't afraid of the answer. I was relieved. And I didn't know yet what it meant about me that the relief came so much faster than the fear. I didn't hear from Marcus's associates again. No unknown numbers. No photographs. No messages. The silence that followed was so complete it almost felt like its own kind of pressure, the absence of something that had been constant for so long. I'd forgotten what it felt like not to brace for it. Zoe slept through the night for the first time in 2 months. I stood in the doorway of her room watching her breathe, and I thought about Han Baiyal. 6 years old. Who loved to draw. I thought about a man who had spent 8 years with all that power and no one to aim it at. And I thought about how strange it is, the way law sometimes finds loss, across a crowded room. The prosecutor's office called on a Monday morning. The hearing was scheduled. They needed my victim impact statement. She explained it carefully. I didn't have to attend if I didn't feel safe, but my statement in person would carry more weight than a written submission. It could affect the length of the sentence significantly. I thought about every woman who came after me if he got out too soon. I'll be there, I said. When I told Min Jae-won, he didn't hesitate. I'm coming with you. You don't have to. I'm coming. The morning of the hearing, I put on the blazer I saved for job interviews. Dark blue, structured, the kind of thing that makes you stand a little straighter just from wearing it. Min Jae-won arrived at my door in a suit that was, as always, impeccable. He looked at me for a moment when I opened the door. "You look ready," he said. "I don't feel ready." "You don't have to feel it. You just have to do it." The courthouse was cold the way institutional buildings are always cold, the kind of chill that has nothing to do with temperature. I sat at the front beside the prosecutor, my hands folded in my lap to keep them from shaking visibly. Min Jae-won sat directly behind me. I couldn't see him. But I could feel him there, steady, solid, a fixed point behind me in a room that felt like it was tilting. When they brought Marcus in, my whole body went rigid. He looked different, thinner, his jaw set, something diminished in the way he held himself that I had never seen before. He scanned the courtroom when they walked him to his seat. His eyes found mine. Then they moved past me and found Min Jae-won sitting behind me, and everything in Marcus's face changed. The bluster drained out completely. What replaced it was something I had never once seen on his face in 4 years of marriage. Fear. His attorney made arguments. Mitigating factors. Expressions of remorse. A man who had made mistakes and deserved an opportunity to correct them. The prosecutor presented the evidence, the mall security footage, photographs of the bruising on my neck taken at the hospital the day after, Zoe's therapy records documenting the nightmares she'd been having since the incident. Then it was my turn. I stood on legs that were not entirely steady, and I walked to the front of the room, and I looked at my statement, and I read every word. I described what it felt like to be held by my hair in a public aisle while my daughter begged on her knees. I described the weight of 4 years of a particular kind of fear, not the dramatic fear of an obvious danger, but the constant, low-grade fear of a woman who has learned to read a room, a tone of voice, a pause before a sentence, because her physical safety depends on reading them correctly. I described Zoe's nightmares. The way she still flinched at loud male voices. The therapy sessions. The progress. The setbacks. My voice shook at certain points. I didn't stop. I kept going until I reached the last sentence, and then I walked back to my seat on those same unsteady legs and I sat down. Min Jae-won's hand briefly touched my shoulder. 1 second. That was all. It was enough. The judge didn't deliberate long. "Mr. Williams, you violated a court-issued restraining order and committed a violent assault in a public space in front of your minor child. The evidence presented today reflects not an isolated incident, but a sustained pattern. I am sentencing you to 9 years in state prison, with a permanent no-contact order to take effect upon release." 9 years. I heard the number, and something inside me, something that had been clenched for so long I'd forgotten it wasn't supposed to be that way, released. Outside the courthouse, the autumn air hit me, and I stood on the steps and let myself cry. Properly. Completely. The way I hadn't allowed myself to in front of anyone in a very long time. Min Jae-won stepped beside me, and I turned toward him, and he put his arms around me, and I pressed my face against his chest and let all of it out. The fear. The relief. The 4 years. The mall aisle. Zoe's knees on the cold tile. All of it. "It's done," he said quietly. "He can't reach you anymore." And for the first time since I left Marcus, I believed it. Without the immediate shadow of a counter-argument. 2 weeks after the sentencing, he called and asked me to dinner. "Just you," he said. "Not Zoe this time. Just the 2 of us." My heart did something it hadn't done in a long time. Like a date? A slight pause. Yes. Like a date. My mother took Zoe for the night. I stood in my closet for 20 minutes, and then I put on the black dress Tanya had given me for my birthday 11 months ago, still had the tags on it. When Min Jae-won arrived and I opened the door, the look on his face made those 20 minutes worth every second. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. Like it was simply a fact he was noting. He drove us across the city to a rooftop restaurant I had never heard of. When we arrived, I understood why. It wasn't the kind of place with a public profile. The elevator opened directly onto an open-air terrace, candlelit, the city laid out below us in every direction like something from a dream. We were the only ones there. You reserved the entire restaurant, I said. I wanted to be able to talk to you without interruption. We sat at a table near the edge, the skyline behind him, the candles between us, and for a while we talked about ordinary things. Zoe's progress in therapy. A funny thing she'd said that morning. My first week in the dental hygiene certification program I'd registered for. He listened the way he did everything, completely, without the restless half-attention of someone waiting for their own turn to speak. Then he set down his glass and looked at me with the expression I had come to recognize as him deciding to say something true. I need to tell you something, he said. And I need you to actually hear it. Okay. I've been trying to maintain distance. Since the beginning. Trying not to take advantage of the fact that you were in a vulnerable position when we met, that protecting you had built something between us before you'd had the chance to choose it deliberately. He paused. I can't maintain it anymore. My breath caught. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that afternoon in the mall, he said. What started as the right thing to do became something I don't have a more controlled word for. Min. I need you to understand what choosing me means, he continued. My world is complicated. There are people in it who could use you to get to me. Risks I can minimize but not eliminate. You deserve to know that clearly before anything else. I already know that, I said. Cindy. I know what your world is. My voice was steadier than I expected. And I know that since the day we met, I have felt safer than I have in 4 years. I know that my daughter calls you and genuinely means it. I know what you did for us, and I know what it cost you to let me see the parts of you that are still healing. I held his gaze. I'm not afraid of complicated. I survived a different kind of dangerous for 4 years. At least yours is aimed in the right direction. He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached across the table and took both my hands in his. I'm not asking to date you and see where it goes, he said. That's not what I'm offering. I'm asking you to let me be your partner. Permanently. To let me stand between you and anything that tries to reach you or Zoe. You're asking me to choose you, I said. Knowing everything I am. His grip on my hands was firm and certain. Yes. I didn't need time. Yes, I said. I choose you. Something moved through his expression, relief, and certainty, and something that had been held tightly for a very long time, finally, carefully, letting go. He stood and pulled me to my feet and kissed me, not tentatively, not like a question, but like something that had already been decided and was simply now being confirmed. When he pulled back, his hands were still framing my face. There's something I want to show you, he said. He drove us across the city to a neighborhood I didn't know, quiet streets, mature trees lining both sides, houses set back from the curb with small front yards and porch lights glowing in the dark. He pulled up in front of a townhouse. Brick, 3 stories, a covered front porch, a light on in the front window like someone lived there who expected to be home. Whose house is this? He turned off the engine and looked at me. Yours. If you want it. I stared at him. Come inside, he said. He unlocked the door and I stepped through into hardwood floors, high ceilings, large windows, a kitchen with actual counter space. Everything already furnished, warm colors, solid pieces, nothing showy. A home. Not a showroom. A home. He took me upstairs. The first bedroom was clearly meant for me, soft and calm and real, a reading chair by the window that seemed to have been placed there by someone who had noticed, at some point, that I always angled toward the light when I read. The second room made my throat close completely. Zoe's favorite colors. Bookshelves already stocked. A desk with a lamp. Stuffed animals arranged on the bed with the particular care of someone who had paid close attention to what she loved. How did you? I paid attention, he said simply. The third room was a home office. A desk, a computer, a comfortable chair. And on the desk, a folder. I opened it with hands that had started shaking again. An enrollment confirmation letter for the dental hygiene certification program. And beneath it, a receipt showing the full tuition paid. I turned around and he was watching me from the doorway, and I couldn't speak for a moment because there were no words organized in the right order. "I want to give you the life you deserve," he said. "You and Zoe. Not survival. A life. This is too much. It's not enough." He crossed the room slowly. "You don't have to move in tomorrow. You don't have to decide anything tonight except whether this is what you want. But this is yours, whenever you're ready." "Why?" I managed. "Why would you do all of this?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because you and Zoe gave me something I had stopped believing I would find again," he said, and his voice had that rough edge it only got when something was true all the way down. "A reason to protect someone. A reason to build towards something. A reason to care about what happens next." I closed the distance between us and put my arms around him and held on. "I don't need time," I said against his chest. "I know what I want." "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything." He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a small velvet box. "I'm not asking you to marry me tonight," he said, opening it. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single stone set low and clean. "You're still building your life. Zoe is still healing. But I want you to know that my intentions are not casual, and they are not temporary." He slid it onto my finger. "When you're ready, truly ready, I'll ask properly. Until then, I want you to know that you and Zoe are my family now." I looked at the ring on my hand. Then at him. Then, through the window of Zoe's future bedroom, at the quiet street below, with its trees and its porch lights and its complete, extraordinary stillness. For the first time in my life, I was not afraid of what came next. I had been grabbed by someone who wanted to erase me. And I had been found by someone who wanted to build me back up, not into something he owned, but into something I chose to become. That is the difference between control and protection. And I had lived on both sides of that line long enough to know it, the moment I felt it. If this story stayed with you, if you've ever known what it means to finally feel safe after a long time of not being, hit that subscribe button right now and leave a comment telling me which moment hit you hardest. It truly means a lot to me seeing this community grow all around the world. Every subscriber, every comment, every share helps us bring more stories like Cindy's to the people who need them most, together.